Imagine you're in a room, talking with passion, giving your best ideas, and the person across from you is nodding, but checking their phone under the table. Or worse, you're at work, you give a great suggestion, and nobody acts on it. The truth is, most of us are not heard the way we want to be. Not because our ideas aren't good, but because we forget one simple truth. People don't listen to logic. They listen to what moves them. What if I told you there's a way to speak so people not only hear you, but feel inspired to act on what you say? It's not magic, it's a skill. And like any skill, it can be learned. Imagine you walk into a room and someone starts talking about something that's important to them, but you don't know the context. You're not in the mood, and it feels like they're pulling you into their world without even checking if you're ready. How do you feel? Distant, disconnected, maybe even a little annoyed. Now flip it. Imagine someone walks up to you, looks you in the eye, and says, "You've had a long day, haven't you?" Or, "I get the sense you've been trying hard lately." Instantly, there's a shift. Your ears open. Your guard lowers. Because they're starting where you are, not where they are. And that makes all the difference. We do this mistake every day. We jump into conversations with our own goals, our own emotions, our own urgency, without taking a second to think about the other person's mental state. It's like trying to tune into a radio station. When the frequency's off, you get static, not music. You want to talk so people listen. You want them to not just hear you, but feel you. Then meet them at their frequency. A mother tells her teenager to study harder. The teen rolls his eyes. She lectures more. He shuts down. What if, instead, she started with, "I know school feels like a drag sometimes. I hated math at your age too." Now the boy's listening. Why? Because she didn't climb up on a soapbox. She sat down beside him. A manager tells her team to push through another late shift. Sighs fill the room. What if she said, "I know we're all tired. I stayed up late with my daughter last night too. And I'm running on coffee and hope. But I believe in what we're doing." Suddenly, the team leans in. They feel seen. They feel together. People don't resist your message because they don't care. They resist because they don't feel understood. You break that wall by pausing long enough to ask yourself, where is this person right now? What matters to them at this moment? Think about it. When someone speaks to your current struggle, your emotion, your moment, you don't just listen. You remember. your heart leans forward. That's the power of starting where they are. This doesn't require grand speeches. It just takes attention, listening, a pause. You're talking to a friend who's going through a breakup. You don't launch into advice. You say, "Oh, that must feel heavy right now." You're talking to a coworker who's missed a deadline. You don't scold them first. You ask, "Was something going on? Want to talk about it?" And what happens? They soften. They open. They lean toward you, not away. This is how influence works. Not by pushing your way in, but by being invited in. And people invite you in when you prove that you're not here to talk at them. You're here to walk with them. Next time you're about to speak, take one moment to step into their shoes. Feel what they feel. Speak from there. That one shift turns your words from noise into connection, from instruction into inspiration. Think of the people who made a difference in your life. They didn't just talk to you. They talked to where you were. That's why it stuck. That's why it changed you. That's why you still remember their words today. GPT said, "There's one secret to influence that most people overlook. Not because it's hard, but because it's so simple, they assume it can't be that powerful. Yet the most unforgettable speakers, the most inspiring leaders, and the most magnetic personalities all have one thing in common. They make others feel important, not with big speeches, not with fake compliments, not with over-the-top praise. No, they do it in small, human moments. They remember a name. They look someone in the eye. They listen without interrupting. They make you feel like, in that moment, you're the only person that matters." Picture this. A teacher walks into a noisy classroom. Kids are talking, distracted. Instead of yelling, she walks up to one student and says, "I noticed your drawings yesterday. You've got something special there." The room goes quiet. The boy lights up, and the rest of the class starts to pay attention. Not because she demanded it, but because she gave someone the feeling that they mattered. People don't follow titles. They follow connection. They follow people who make them feel like their presence has weight. There's a story of a man who met a famous speaker after a big event. The speaker had 100 hands to shake, cameras flashing, people all around. But when the man introduced himself, the speaker stopped, smiled, and said, "Wait, let me get your name again. I want to make sure I remember it." And he repeated it back, slowly, with care. Years later, the man said, "I don't remember the speech. I barely remember the event. but I'll never forget how he made me feel. For 2 seconds. Like I was the most important person in the room. That's the impact of making someone feel seen. Not just noticed. Seen. We live in a world that moves fast. People are glued to screens, rushing through conversations, distracted in meetings, scrolling through messages. So when someone pauses and actually gives you their full attention, it feels electric. It cuts through the noise. It creates a moment that sticks. A friend of mine once said, "The most powerful words I ever heard weren't 'I love you.' They were, 'I'm proud of you.' No one had said that to me before." Think about that. How many people do we walk past every day who are starving for a single, sincere word? A father tells his son, "I know you're trying." The boy stands taller. A manager tells her team, "This wouldn't work without you." The room lifts. A cashier gets told by a customer, "You handled that rush so well." And suddenly, a hard day becomes bearable. Words cost nothing. But the right words, at the right moment, can shift a person's entire day. Or even their life. People don't act because they're forced to. They act because they feel valued. They rise to the level of belief you have in them. When you speak to someone's worth, when you make them feel like they matter, like their contribution is real, you unlock something powerful in them. This is not flattery. This is recognition. Flattery is saying what you think people want to hear. Recognition is noticing what they didn't think anyone saw. It's telling the intern, "You brought energy into this room today." It's telling the janitor, "This place runs because of you." It's telling your brother, "You've grown so much, and I see it." The loudest voices aren't always the ones people remember. The ones that echo longest are the ones that lift others up when they weren't expecting it. Because deep down, every person is asking the same question. Do I matter? And when your words answer that question with a yes, you don't just speak. You leave a mark. Being genuinely curious is not just about asking questions. It's about wanting to understand, really understand, the person in front of you. It's about putting aside your own agenda for a moment and leaning in, heart first, mind open. Most people listen to reply. The rare few listen to connect. Imagine sitting with someone who asks you how your day was. And before you finish your sentence, they're already looking at their phone or shifting the topic to themselves. Now imagine someone asking you the same question. But they lean forward, nod, their eyes on yours, and say, "What happened next?" that second person. You'll tell them things you didn't even plan to share. Because curiosity creates space. And space creates trust. When you're genuinely curious, people can feel it. It's in your tone. It's in your eyes. It's in the silence you allow after their words. Because you're not rushing to speak. You're holding the moment. A young employee walks into a performance review expecting the usual checklist. Instead, their manager says, "Before we start, what's been challenging for you lately?" Not just with work, but in general. The room shifts. The air softens. The employee starts to talk. Not just about missed deadlines, but about anxiety, late nights, feeling stuck. That conversation changes everything. Why? Because someone cared enough to ask a question that wasn't in a script. A parent is arguing with their teenage daughter again. It's the same fight. Messy room. Missed chores. Rolled eyes. Then one evening, the parent sits down quietly and asks, "Hey, you've seemed distant lately. Is there something you wish I understood about how you feel?" The daughter pauses, breathes. Something cracks open. Curiosity isn't just a tool. It's a bridge. It's how you step into someone else's world and say, "Show me how life looks through your eyes." But it only works if it's real. People are smart. They can smell fake interest from a mile away. Asking a question because you think you're supposed to isn't curiosity. It's a script. But asking because you truly want to know. That's power. That's leadership. Leaders who are genuinely curious make better decisions. Friends who are genuinely curious build deeper bonds. Speakers who are genuinely curious about their audience's struggles move hearts, not just minds. I remember hearing someone say, "The most powerful people I've met aren't the ones with the most answers. They're the ones with the most honest questions." And that's the key. Honest questions. Not, "How are you?" with your eyes elsewhere. But how are you really doing? With silence after. In your daily life, it looks like this. You meet someone new, and instead of, "What do you do?" you ask, "What's something that excites you lately?" You see a friend who's quiet, and instead of, "Everything okay?" you say, "You've been a little quiet lately. Want to talk?" You hear an opinion you disagree with, and instead of arguing, you say, "I'm curious. What led you to feel that way?" This kind of curiosity isn't just polite. It's transformative. It turns conversations into connections. It turns strangers into allies. It turns surface talk into soul talk. Real curiosity makes you unforgettable. Not because you had the best lines or the most charm, but because you made someone feel like their story mattered enough to be explored, like their thoughts were worth understanding, like their presence wasn't just tolerated, it was wanted. ChatGPT said use stories, not just facts, because facts tell, but stories sell. Facts may reach the brain, but stories go straight to the heart. You can throw all the data, logic, and bullet points you want at someone, but if you want them to feel something, to remember what you said, to actually do something afterward, you need to tell them a story. Not a fairy tale, a real one. Something they can see, touch, relate to. Something they can find themselves inside of. Imagine telling someone, hard work pays off. Sounds nice. Maybe even true. But it floats past them like a passing breeze. Now instead, picture this. A boy wakes up at 5 a.m. every morning to help his father sell tea on a roadside cart. It's cold. His hands shake. He dreams of a bigger life, but all he has is a cracked radio and second-hand books. Years later, that same boy walks onto a stage in a crisp suit to address the nation as a leader. When people ask how he got there, he doesn't say luck. He says, I never stopped waking up at 5. Now the message sticks. Why? Because it's not a phrase. It's a picture. Stories are sticky. They stay. Long after your speech ends. Long after the meeting finishes. Long after the slide disappears. People don't quote your data. They remember your story. A doctor tells a patient, smoking is harmful. And the patient nods politely, but lights up a cigarette the moment they leave. Now imagine the doctor says, I had a patient last month, 38 years old, 2 kids. Came in with a cough that wouldn't go away. 2 months later, I was holding his wife's hand at the hospital. The cigarette didn't seem harmful until it did. The tone changes. The listener leans in, not because the fact changed, but because the story made it real. Every day, people are bombarded with information. Facts have become background noise. But stories cut through. Stories have the power to walk into someone's mind and rearrange what they believe about the world. You want to convince your team to stay late and finish a project. Don't just say it's important. Tell them about the one client who trusted your company with everything they had. How that client put their dream in your hands. Now it's not about staying late. It's about honoring someone's belief in you. You want to inspire a room full of students. Don't list famous names and achievements. Tell them about a girl who failed every subject in school, was told she'd never make it, and now runs a global company. Give them a face they can relate to, a journey they can see themselves in. Story is the bridge between what you know and what others can feel. It doesn't need to be long. Even a few sentences can be powerful. A child looks at her dad and says, "Why don't you smile anymore?" And that one line breaks a man open after years of hiding behind silence. That's a story, a single moment with weight. And here's the magic. When you tell a story, you're not just speaking. You're inviting. You're saying, "Come walk with me for a moment. Come feel what I felt. Come see what I saw." And in that shared space, change happens. Connection happens. Action begins. You don't need to be a professional speaker. You just need to be real. Tell people about the time you were afraid, but spoke up anyway. The time you lost and learned more than when you won. The time you doubted yourself, but showed up. People don't need perfect. They need honest. They need human. They need something they can feel in their chest and carry in their memory chat. GPT said, "Words are only part of what people hear when you speak. It's not just what you say, it's how you say it." The truth is, your body speaks before your mouth ever opens. Your eyes speak when your lips are silent. Your posture, your presence, your energy, it all speaks. People are always reading you, whether they know it or not. And what you communicate without words is often more powerful than any line you could rehearse. Think of the last time someone said, "I'm listening," but their eyes were somewhere else. Maybe they were nodding while glancing at their phone, checking their watch, looking over your shoulder. Did you feel heard? Now think of the opposite. Someone sits across from you, leans in slightly, keeps steady eye contact, and you feel their presence, like warmth in the room. They haven't even said much, but you feel safe, seen, and respected. That's the difference. That's the power of talking with your eyes and your body. You walk into an interview room with your shoulders slouched, your eyes on the floor, and your handshake weak. Even before you answer a single question, you've already told the interviewer a story. One of fear, uncertainty, or disinterest. Now imagine walking in with steady steps, eyes forward, a firm handshake, and a calm, grounded presence. Now you've told a different story. And you didn't need a single word to do it. Your body language is a mirror. It reflects what's going on inside. But here's the twist. It also affects how others feel around you. Confidence is contagious. So is doubt. Energy spreads. If you're alive and expressive, the room lifts with you. If you're flat and disengaged, the air feels heavy. I once saw a speaker talk to a room of students. His words were great, maybe even brilliant, but he stood like a statue. No hand gestures, no eye contact, no movement. Within minutes, the students' attention drifted. But then came another speaker. Same topic, different body. He walked the stage with purpose. His eyes lit up with every example. His hands told the story with him. And the crowd leaned in, hungry for every word. The message wasn't more complex. It was just more alive. You don't have to be loud. You don't have to be dramatic. But you do have to be real. You do have to let your body match your message. If you're passionate, show it. If you care deeply, let it live in your eyes. If you're telling a serious story, lower your tone, slow your movement, and let the weight of it land. There's a reason the best communicators in the world work on more than their words. They work on their pauses, their facial expressions, their stance, their gaze. They know that people don't just listen. They watch. And if what they see doesn't match what they hear, they don't trust it. A father says to his son, "I'm proud of you." But his arms are crossed, and he won't meet his son's eyes. The words land half-hearted. Now imagine he places a hand on his son's shoulder, looks him directly in the eye, and says with a soft voice, "I'm proud of the man you're becoming." Same words, different world. Your body is an instrument. Every gesture, every glance, every stillness is part of the music you're playing. You don't need to be theatrical. You just need to be present. People will forget half of what you say, but they will never forget how you looked at them when you said it. How your energy made them feel. How your presence made them believe it was real. ChatGPT said, "Every great conversation ends with a choice. The choice to walk away, unchanged, or to take a piece of it with you and let it shape the way you live, speak, and lead." So here's the truth, plain and simple. You already have everything it takes to move people. Not because of your title, not because of your experience, but because of your story, your sincerity, and your voice. When you speak, you are not just passing air through your lungs. You are transferring belief. Belief in an idea. Belief in a future. Belief in someone's worth. And belief, when spoken with purpose, can break walls, light fires, and move mountains. You don't need to be perfect to be powerful. You just need to be present. You don't need to have the right words every time. You need to mean the words you choose. You don't need to shout to be heard. Sometimes, a quiet voice spoken with honesty can echo louder than thunder. Remember this. People don't always remember what you said, but they will never forget how you made them feel. So make them feel seen. Make them feel valued. Make them feel strong. Let your voice be the one that reminded them who they are when the world was busy telling them who they're not. You are always auditioning for trust. Every word, every gesture, every glance, it matters. So speak with fire, but also with empathy. Speak with clarity, but also with compassion. And when you speak, speak not just to inform, but to transform. As Nelson Mandela once said, "It always seems impossible until it is done." Your words can make someone believe that. Your presence can make someone see that. The world is full of noise. Anyone can talk. Very few know how to touch. So be the one who speaks and silence follows. Be the one who doesn't just talk to be heard, but talks to build, to lift, to lead. Every time you speak, ask yourself, am I adding value, or am I just filling space? Am I reaching for their mind, or am I reaching for their heart? Look around. People are not waiting for more information. They are starving for inspiration. And that inspiration does not come from facts alone. It comes from courage. It comes from vulnerability. It comes from real stories told by real people who dared to be seen. As Maya Angelou said, words mean more than what is set down on paper. It takes the human voice to infuse them with deeper meaning. So be that voice. Not the loudest, not the most polished, but the most alive. Think of the speeches that changed history. Think of the conversations that changed your life. Were they perfect? Maybe not. But they were true. They were human. They were spoken by someone who believed deeply in what they were saying. Someone who believed that words could build a bridge from one soul to another. When you speak from that place, you don't just communicate, you connect. You don't just inform, you ignite. As Steve Jobs once said, the people who are crazy enough to think they can change the world are the ones who do. And sometimes, all it takes to spark that change is a single voice, speaking with intention, with honesty, and with heart. So next time you stand to speak, whether it's to a room of thousands or to one quiet soul, remember the power you carry, not in how loud you speak, but in how deeply you care. Not in how perfect your words are, but in how real your message is. Because in the end, people don't follow perfection. They follow connection. And connection begins the moment you choose to speak not to impress, but to inspire.